Harrison Graham here at Radio Row for Super Bowl 57 in Phoenix, Arizona, gearing up for the big game on Sunday between the Chiefs and Eagles. We're here with former Detroit Lions center Dominic Raiola. Dominic, appreciate you joining us today. Let's start with the Lions, who it's been a while since they've been fun and competitive. Obviously, they trade Matthew Stafford a couple of years ago. He goes on to win a Super Bowl. But this year, under Dan Campbell, having a pretty good bounce-back year and things moving in the right direction. What do you think about Campbell's leadership in Detroit and where this franchise is going?
Yeah, I got to play with Danny, and I'm just excited what he's doing there. His excitement, his energy, his leadership is really who he is. That's who he was as a player. He has good lineage on the coaching side. Parcells drafted him. You know, coach with Sean Payton for a while. Really earned his stripes in the business. And you know, if you asked me 2 years ago if I thought he would be a head coach, I didn't. I didn't think that at all. But I love what he's doing. I just didn't know that was his aspirations. You know, that's pretty much why. But Danny was a fierce competitor, tough as hell. You know, so when you see him on Hard Knocks, like doing the up downs, doing the push-ups, taping his wrist, that's really who he is. And that kind of, you know, and that gets contagious. And I think we saw that towards the end of the year. And you kind of wish, as a Lions fan, you kind of wish you had like 5 more weeks in the season, because they were hot, and I don't know how many teams wanted to see him at the end.
Yeah, I think had they gotten in, they would have been much more dangerous than Seattle, for example, who didn't really have a chance to win a playoff game. But I think that's so huge, right? I mean, it's kind of cliche, but we always throw out the word culture. But he really does seem to just come off as super authentic, and as a former player, that's huge, right? You gotta believe in what the coach is preaching and what he's saying to a locker room, and it certainly seems like this Lions group has bought into what he's selling. And I think you look at the NFC North next year, who knows what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers. The Bears are still young and rebuilding. Minnesota had a good year but won a bunch of close games. Could Detroit win this division in 2023? I think it's possible.
It's definitely for the taking. You know, I've learned a lot of lessons over the time playing there, but I do know that it's a new year. It's a reset. They're going to have to earn their stripes, as we say. They're not in the position where they're the perennial playoff contenders yet, but you know they're on the way, and I definitely know that, you know, Danny won't take that for granted. He's going to use that momentum, and they're going to make a run at this North now. It's for the taking, that's for sure.
If you were Detroit, would you draft a quarterback this year? Jared Goff had a really nice 2022 season. Would you continue to build the roster and maybe look at 24 for a quarterback, or would you go ahead and target someone this year? Maybe he sits for a year behind Goff. I think that's a key decision early on in this draft to see what Detroit tries to do. What would you do? I
think Jared Goff's so young in his development, and I think you build the team around him, because they didn't ask him to win the game by himself. And you continue to add those pieces that is going to support him, and you can win a 13-10 game, or you can win a 45-42 game. So I think he has the ability to put up a lot of points. I think you continue to add pieces around him, but I do not think I wouldn't waste a high pick on a quarterback.
What do you think is maybe a missing piece for this team? Obviously, again, they're trending in the right direction, but you got to add more. You looking somewhere on offense, on defense? If you had to go one area, what is an area you think Detroit could add via free agency or in the draft to help this team really take that step and be a contender as soon as next year?
You know, there's really not a lot of holes on offense. There's not a lot of household names yet, but they're on their way to becoming household names. I would continue to add to the defense. I mean, the offense have shown, you know, how dynamic and how electric they can be with putting a lot of points up. But, you know, you can never get too many defensive players that, you know, that's going to force the issue, force stops, and, you know, really take the pressure off the offense.
As a former offensive lineman, what do you see from Penei Sewell early on in his career? He seems to really be coming into his own as one of those young, dominant players. What do you see when you kind of look at the X's and O's and you have that expert analysis? What stands out to you from the young offensive lineman?
Well, it's all the way across the board, right? But Penei is just one of those guys where we're talking about a guy who won the Outland Trophy, 19 years old, sat out a year, and then still got drafted, you know, where he got drafted and dominated. Then you got a left tackle in Taylor Decker that's a monster Pro Bowl type player. Frank Ragnow's a Pro Bowl type player. They got some guards, some pieces in there that they can build in there. So they have a good foundation. and they have some depth. They've really done a good job building that thing from the inside out. And to me, you can fall back on that. You can fall back on a good offensive line no matter who's around you. And so continuing to add those pieces, continuing to build on that momentum. But that's definitely one of their strong suits.
Spending your entire career in Detroit, out of the other 3 teams in the division, was there a hatred toward one more than the other? Was it pretty equal? Obviously, Green Bay has kind of been the king of the castle for a while. When you were playing, which kind of team did you guys highlight most when that game came up on the schedule?
Well, that was the old black and blue division, so it was I don't think you ever liked playing any of them. I think Green Bay was one of those where they were just good all the time, and I don't know if we were ever favored to beat Green Bay. I've never beat them at Lambeau. So those are one of those teams where you didn't like them. But I loved watching Brett Favre. I loved watching Aaron Rodgers compete. Now, obviously, when you're playing, you hated going against those guys because they were such fierce competitors outside of how talented they were. The Bears, their defense, the challenge was, but it was a fun division to play in. So across the board, I don't know if hate's the right word. It just really, I don't think there was a Sunday that the juices weren't flowing when you were playing anybody, let alone those 3 other teams.
Before we let you go, I do want to ask you about your son's recruitment process. Dylan, 5-star quarterback in the 2024 class, decommitted from Ohio State a couple of months ago. If you're willing to speak on why he chose to back out of that commitment, that would be great, and where he is in his process now as he enters his senior season next fall.
Yeah, the process was it was sped up. It was really sped up. It's whatever that conversation happened between Ohio State and Dylan and our family. We're going to keep that there, but I got nothing but great things to say about that organization, that program, with how they develop quarterbacks and what they do up there. Now, having said that, there are some teams that are in the mix. That we're not zeroing it in. We're not making a top 5. I will say, Nebraska, Georgia, SC, Oregon. He talked to Garrett Riley last night at Clemson. Jim Harbaugh was here to see him a few weeks ago. And so, there are teams that are still in the mix, and you're so early, and we're just trying to gather as much information as we can at this point. And he can, really. This is his process, but we're just there to guide him along the way.
Dominic Raiola hanging out with us at Radio Row in Phoenix. Appreciate the time. Quick Super Bowl prediction?
You know what? I thought about it overnight. I made some predictions yesterday. I'm going to go with Philly. I played in the NFC for one. I got some dudes that I played with on that team with Dominic Sewell and Slay, and some coaches that were really instrumental in my development. So I'm going to go with Philly, even though the best player on the planet's on the other side.
There you have it. He predicts the Philadelphia Eagles will win Super Bowl 57.